What's up, guys? Here are my predictions for the Ultimate Fighter finale and UFC 226 happening this weekend. Now, on the Ultimate Fighter finale, I'm just going to cover the main event here. Not the best card, but then again, it's on a Friday just before UFC 226, which is what I think is the biggest card of the year. So when we look at Brad Tavares versus Israel Adesanya, this is a pretty good fight, especially to see where exactly is Israel Adesanya. Very good indicator on his skills and how good is he going to be in this division, basically. Both are strikers primarily. Tavares, I would say, has a better grappling game, better wrestling game. Adesanya is more experienced in his striking, especially when you look at his kickboxing record. He's one of the most credentialed strikers in the UFC right now. But in MMA, especially in his last fight against Marvin Vettori, he didn't look too impressive. He has this style, this hands low, baiting style where he tries to get opponents to throw at him, he counters them, and he likes to pressure them. If he's able to pressure you to the cage and keep you there and just rip you apart with precise shots like you saw in his first fight in the UFC, that is the last place you want to be. And Brad Tavares is pretty aggressive in his striking. He has big power. He will throw his left hook to follow up with the right hand, but he's really looking for that right straight or even overhand. Sometimes he'll switch stances. He's a pretty athletic guy. He's pretty adept in his striking. He's able to do a lot of things. I would say he is the more well-rounded fighter. He's able to use the wrestling in this one, which he doesn't normally do, but the advantage he has, all the training he put into wrestling trumps what Israel Adesanya put into it. And against Vettori, who's not a wrestler himself, he was able to take down Adesanya too. So that is a big thing that Adesanya is going to have to look out for. But the thing about Tavares is he will look to brawl sometimes. You know, if he gets tagged, he will try to just swing back at times. And that is not what you want to do against a guy like Adesanya. As soon as you are reluctant to throw out some winging shot or try to exchange with him, he's just going to pick you apart. He's going to get you into his baiting game, into his countering style that he has. He starts switching stances, little kicks to the body. And another big thing about Tavares, which leads me to think that this fight, on the feet that is, the style Tavares brings out there might be a lot better for Adesanya than Vettori's was. And the reason for that is, Tavares will sometimes be willing to allow the opponent to lead the dance. And you never want to do that against Adesanya. Look at Vettori. Vettori was the one trying to put the pressure on Adesanya right away. And that's what threw him off a lot of times. Tavares can use that as well. Then again, there's game plans which bring in X factors that we don't know about. Maybe Tavares will come out there and try to be the pressuring fighter. But if he doesn't, if he does what he usually does and sometimes allows Adesanya to push him back just because he's looking for his openings, he might never find those openings unless he uses the wrestling, all that kind of stuff. But if he's against the cage, it's going to be very hard for him to find any of that. Because Adesanya, anything that comes with basics with kickboxing, Muay Thai, pretty much any striking style, Adesanya has it down to a T. Everything. He has excellent defense. He can put his hands up if he wants, but he's really good at leaning back and pulling up punches, slipping up punches very quickly, returning with his shots. He fights equally in either stance. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Israel Adesanya, and I'm going to go by a second or third round TKO. I think there's going to be a lot of damage accumulating throughout the fight. First round might be a little bit dicey for Adesanya. I think he'll try to figure Tavares out, try to get his timing down, and then ultimately put on the pressure in the second round. And then we go to UFC 226, and we're going to start with Paul Felder versus Mike Perry, the first fight on the Fight Pass. What a fight to have as your first fight. Now, when we look at this fight, it's going to be pretty much a striking battle. Paul Felder has been working on his wrestling a lot. Mike Perry has switched camps, so there's some X factors there. But both are primarily strikers. Paul Felder is a Muay Thai fighter. He loves spinning techniques. Very, very powerful. And he's fighting at welterweight, I think for the first time in the UFC. I don't know how big he's going to get. Mike Perry's not a big welterweight, so the size could be very equal here or relative. But Paul Felder, man, he's so powerful. And at welterweight, the power might be increased. This is something else that we don't know about Paul. How is the power going to translate? His speed might be hindered, which is something he had at lightweight. He was a fast lightweight, but he has excellent kicks, excellent spinning kicks. He sets up combinations, but there are a lot of power shots. You know, the jabs are pretty stiff as well, and that could play right into Mike Perry's game if Paul Felder doesn't mind his P's and Q's, because Mike Perry's a brawler through and through. I mean, he wants those kind of exchanges. But the thing about Paul Felder's wrestling, like you saw in Charles Oliveira fight, and his ground and pound, I mean, that has been evolving because he never really had that in his game. He never showed it. A little bit in the Derrick Cruikshank fight, but the Charles Oliveira fight is really where it shined. That's something to be alarmed for Mike Perry, because Mike Perry's looking to throw heavy leather. He just wants to make it as untechnical and as heated as possible. But where Mike Perry has the most technique, I think I believe is in the clinch, especially with the Muay Thai plum and all that kind of stuff. Paul Felder is really good there too, but I give the edge to Mike Perry just slightly because of how aggressive he is in there. He's always looking to get position. He actually has really good control in there. I mean, he's able to explode into those elbows so fast. You saw that in the Jake Ellenberger fight. But the problem with Mike Perry is going to be from a distance. How he's going to get in on Paul Felder. Because everything he throws, he's going to be a lot slower than Felder. Like, a lot slower. The choices he makes to get in close aren't the best at times. You know, sometimes he'll throw a jab and he'll take a shot, and the shot plants the opponent sometimes, able to get Perry in on him and try to exchange, but that's not going to work against a guy like Paul Felder. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Paul Felder. I'm going to go by a 3rd round TKO. I think there's going to be a lot of damage in this one. I think Perry is going to get tagged a lot. I think he's going to show his heart, show his toughness, but I think it's just going to be too much at the end of the day. I think his spinning back fist might be open on Perry, especially when he's looking for those big shots, those loopy punches, and how fast Felder is able to spin. He'll get right on the inside of those. Then we go to Lando Vannata versus Drakkar Klose. Now, this is a pretty interesting fight, and I think it's a lot closer than people think. Lando Vannata's gotten kind of a name ever since fighting Tony Ferguson and doing very well against him, but after that, some of his performances haven't been what was expected afterwards, especially in the David Tamer fight. I mean, he was kind of outclassed on the feet. Everything he tried to do was just outdone by Tamer. But he's going into this one against a wrestler with big power in his hands, and it could work to his favor, that style on paper. Lando Vannata is a flashy striker. He throws pretty much everything on the feet. Hands down, very elusive, very good movement as well. Excellent side kicks to the leg, excellent spinning kicks, turning kicks. Big power in his hands as well, but he fades. That's the biggest thing about this one that makes it closer for Drakkar Klose. In the first round, I think Klose is going to have a hard time catching him. I think he's going to get tagged. I think his speed is just not going to be on the same playing field as Vannata's. And Vannata has an excellent outside slip to a right hand, very similar to what Conor does, but Conor does it in southpaw. And his wrestling defense is there as well. He's able to stuff takedowns pretty well. He's able to just keep distance at all times. Fading is going to be a huge thing. And Drakkar Klose being a wrestler, he has excellent wrestling. I think he's a better wrestler overall than Lando Vannata. In the first round, I think Klose is going to have a hard time taking him down. And he is a bit slower. He has big power, but I don't think he's going to catch Vannata at all. I think he's going to have to try to wear him out, use the wrestling, push him against the cage. A big thing about Klose, though, is when you saw him fight David Tamer. They both fought David Tamer, and he did a lot better against Tamer than Vannata did. But the thing that allowed Tamer to really shine against Klose is he didn't do anything. There were times he wasn't doing anything. He was kind of sitting in the center of the octagon, just egging on Tamer to come at him. And doing that to Vannata, who's that much faster than him and has that kind of footwork, he could do a very similar thing that Tamer did. Just in and out, hit and run kind of a tactic. And Klose is just never able to connect. So he can't do that against Vannata. He has to be very aggressive against Vannata. Mind the counter shots, but also be pressuring. Limit the space that Vannata can use. So my prediction for this fight, this is a really tough one to call, but I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose. I think he's going to be able to take over the fight after the first round. I think he's going to be able to get Vannata tired. I think the takedowns will be there and he'll be able to control the fight. So I'm going to go with Klose. I'm going to go by a decision. Then we go to Raphael Assuncao versus Raphael. Assuncao is just right outside that title shot, man. And he is just a hard guy to fight. He makes everybody look bad against him. He's very defensive on everything, and that doesn't give the opponent a lot of opportunities. And a guy like Raphael, who is very offensive, it could play right against him too. It could make him look bad as well. Assuncao has excellent wrestling. Just overall, a very textbook game. Everything is by the book as well. Good straight right hands, really precise jab, excellent leg kicks as well, and he's very controlling atop if he gets you there. And if you look at his wins, there's a lot of split decisions as well because he's not doing anything that wows the judges or wows the audience or anything that's just really standing out, but he caused the opponent to do that as well. Nothing is standing out in his fights. You saw in the Marlon Moraes fight, you saw in the Aljamain Sterling fight. I mean, two guys that really put on the offense, and he just shuts it down. And that's going to be a big thing against Raphael. Raphael's an excellent boxer. Good jabs, fast. He's big for the division as well. More power than Assuncao does. He has a very fast combination boxing game. And defensively, Raphael just relies on his footwork a lot. He will try to slip punches, but the wrestling, I think, could be there. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Assuncao. I think he's going to just shut down Raphael's offensive game and just ride it out to a decision. Then we go to the headliner of the prelims, Uriah Hall versus Paulo Costa. And a lot of people are looking forward to this one. Two strikers with great takedown defense. I don't see these guys taking each other down. Paulo Costa might go for some. I have a feeling he will. But I just see it being a striking battle. Uriah Hall, very flashy, technical, dynamic striker, Muay Thai style of a fighter. Excellent spinning kicks. Good long punches, power punches. He's super fast. His defense isn't the best. He just relies on his footwork. He has no real good head movement. Like you saw against Chris Weidman a long time ago, like you saw against Derrick Brunson recently, he just doesn't move his head out of the way sometimes. He gets trapped to the cage because he moves back too much. And gets a guy like Paulo Costa, who has an amazing chin, excellent pressuring game, power punching style, traps the opponent. That's going to be tough for Uriah Hall, man. I mean, he's going to have to get out of that situation, and his style just doesn't naturally do that. The biggest thing I can see Uriah Hall catching Paulo Costa with is probably a right straight or left straight, depending on which stance he's in, but a counter shot, catching Paulo Costa sitting on the outside trying to throw big shots, because Uriah Hall does have a 7-inch reach advantage, which is a big reach advantage. But I think Uriah Hall's spinning kicks are going to be neutralized because of the pressure. Moving back like that, unless he does what he did to Gegard Mousasi with a jump spin back kick. If he's able to land that, which is a good technique to move backwards with, that is probably the only spinning technique I could see him trying to land on Paulo Costa. But the thing about that is, Costa doesn't get out of position. Gegard did. Gegard went down almost like he was going to go for a takedown, and he got caught right in the head. Paulo Costa could get caught in the liver, but the stance he takes, the liver is going to be a little bit further away. You know, it's going to be pretty hard to catch that side of him. Now, Paulo Costa, like I said, power puncher, big puncher. He traps opponents. He loves doing that. He's super pressuring. Amazing chin as well. And he's fast, man. He's a super fast middleweight, and he doesn't really gas out. I mean, it gets a guy like Johnny Hendricks where we're in the second round. I mean, Paulo Costa was not gassing. That guy seemed like he could have went 5 rounds just doing that to Hendricks. He has good jabs to measure for his power punches. Excellent right hook. His kicks to the body are so devastating. I mean, his roundhouse kicks are so powerful. It's scary. The big thing I think he can use against Uriah Hall that we saw in his first fight in the UFC is his inside boxing, right? Because Uriah Hall needs range. He doesn't really do too well in the inside. And if he's able to pressure Uriah Hall to the cage, which I think he can do pretty easily, he'll start working the body up close because he doesn't have a long reach. So the power in his punches are going to be in such a short range, he could rip up uppercuts to the body. And I think Uriah Hall's just not going to be able to handle that pressure. My prediction for the fight, I'm going to go with Paulo Costa. I'm going to go by a first or second round knockout. I think he's going to work the body very early, pressure Uriah Hall. The biggest danger for Costa is how is he going to get inside that range really quickly from those long strikes of Uriah Hall? And I think Costa's defensive game, he's always responsible, right? He doesn't try to take hits too much. He's always putting his hands up, and he's excellent with slipping punches just enough to enter on you. And I think he's going to be able to do that on Uriah Hall, who likes to keep his hands down. He's almost like a one-shot fighter, right? He throws one punch and backs up, one punch backs up. If that one punch misses, he's going to be right on the cage, with Paulo Costa just trapping him. Then we go to the main card, Gokhan Saki versus Khalil Rountree. This is a fight I'm super excited for. I mean, anything with Gokhan Saki I'm excited for. And now he's fighting another more inexperienced, I guess you would say, light heavyweight. Now, Khalil Rountree is more of a prospect and much better fighter, I think, than De Silva. Khalil Rountree could use his wrestling. He hasn't used it yet, but he could against Saki. But the thing about that is, Saki has shown pretty good takedown defense against a better wrestler and a better BJJ fighter than Khalil Rountree and De Silva. So how effective is the wrestling going to be? And if it stays on the feet, Gokhan Saki should take this fight, because knowing Saki's credentials, and he fought some of the best kickboxers of all time, but when he came into the UFC and fought De Silva, he had some holes in there. Some things are looking pretty dicey for Saki, especially when he started getting tired. In the first 2.5 minutes, this guy was on fire, man. It looks like no one could strike with him. But after those few minutes in the first round, I mean, he was gassing. And I think a lot of the grappling, a lot of pushing on the cage and push and pull on bigger bodies that he's not used to, or at least never has done in kickboxing before, taxed him a little bit. That's going to be a big thing against Khalil Rountree, because Rountree has better cardio. Rountree has big power as well. He carries that power into the third round, second round, which I could see this fight going to, especially the way if Khalil Rountree is a little bit defensive and tries to just draw out the fight, that will be a tough thing for Saki. But I think in the first round, I think Saki should be more than enough for Rountree. He has excellent left high kicks, excellent straight left hands, counter straights. His right hook over the top is so precise, and especially how small the gloves are now, he can get around the guard easy. I mean, that is a luxury he did not have in kickboxing. And in this one, you saw against De Silva. De Silva could not block his shots. Saki's precision that he's so used to in kickboxing, where he had to get around the big gloves, he has an easy time getting around the small ones. And against Khalil Rountree, who does cover up at times, that's going to be a danger. And Saki's kickboxing style, he is very elusive. He uses a lot of footwork where he doesn't like to cover up too much unless he's against the cage or something. And that adapts really well into MMA, because that plays into MMA distance. And Khalil Rountree, who likes to wing out big punches at times, He has a very powerful overhand right and some very powerful kicks. I don't think it's going to be enough for Gokhan Saki. Saki's going to be right outside of it. I think he's just as fast. More importantly, he has better timing. And he has better precision, and he's better at feeling the striking out than Rountree is. So I'm going to go with Gokhan Saki. I'm going to go by a first round TKO. But if it goes to a decision, I would have Rountree winning the fight. But I'm going to go with Saki by first round TKO. I think the left straights are going to be a big problem. I think the leg kicks are going to be a problem. I can see Rountree getting countered over and over again. Saki making him pay for those overhands and the looping punches. Then we go to Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. Michael Chiesa's head going into this, it still seems like he's thinking about the whole Conor thing, maybe, which is not a good thing coming into this fight. This fight should be a pretty good one. Michael Chiesa is excellent BJJ, long fighter, very tall for the division. He has pretty good power. He's like the only guy I think that rocked Jorge Masvidal besides Wonderboy. Masvidal also said that Chiesa was the hardest puncher he ever faced, which is saying a lot because Masvidal has an insane chin. He will leave himself open at times when he throws out those jabs, and especially that straight right hand. When he throws that straight right hand, his chin is wide open and he drags himself forward sometimes, which could play into Anthony Pettis' favor. The thing about Pettis, though, is his boxing is diminished. It's like disintegrating in a way. Like, his punches have almost no snap to them anymore. It's very strange to see. I don't know if there were shoulder surgeries or something that contributed to his lack of power now and his lack of snap, but something's happened ever since the Gilbert Melendez fight. If you remember that Gilbert Melendez fight, his left hooks were so fast. He was rocking Melendez every time he threw it. Now they're just like super labor, like he's forcing himself to throw them. So if he can bring back that snap somehow, Chiesa's in huge trouble. I would pick Pettis just because of that, but this is going to be a lot closer. Chiesa has excellent chokes on the ground. He's pretty dangerous, but he risks a little bit too much, as does Pettis. So the ground game can really be fun to watch here. Two guys that just goes for submissions constantly, try to risk it all the time. But Chiesa has been found in very bad positions for doing that. He was going to get choked out by Kevin Lee, and he got in a bad position against Beneil Dariush. If he's going to risk it like that against Pettis, is he as dangerous as Pettis going that game with him? I don't know. I don't think so. I think Chiesa's going to have to be a lot more basic and just stick to the book a little bit more in BJJ if he's going to want to control Pettis, because everybody knows to beat Pettis, you got to control his style. You can't let him be so flashy. You can't give him that many openings. Try to transition only when it's available. Don't try to force transitions because that's when Pettis catches you. With the wrestling, I can see only Chiesa taking down Pettis. Pettis taking down Chiesa would be pretty impressive. Chiesa's takedown defense is really good, so that's going to be an interesting thing to see here. And Pettis, as we all know, Taekwondo fighter, one of the most traditional Taekwondo fighters in the UFC. Excellent kicks, fights equal in both stances. He loves the body kicks, and he always tries to switch stances to the opposite of the opponent so he can get those openings a lot better. But my prediction for this fight, I'm going to have to go with Michael Chiesa here. I could see him lose this one. I could see a body shot crumbling him. So this is definitely not a fight to bet on. Pettis, I could see those body shots open, especially with the frame Chiesa has and it's just how tall he is. I think the body shot could be open very similar to how it was on Donald Cerrone. And Chiesa does like to move in sometimes. He doesn't defend himself so well, so that could be open. But I could see Chiesa taking down Pettis and controlling him, landing punches from the outside. I think he has better boxing than Pettis. So I'm going to go with Chiesa. I'm going to go by a decision. Then we go to the Giants here. Francis Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis. What can you really say about this one when you got two giant heavyweights who love to go forward and throw bombs at each other? How much technique is going to come into this one to break down? I mean, the first one to land, I think, would win this fight. But you have to take note in the reach. Ngannou has a 4-inch reach advantage. He's 1 inch taller, so the reach is going to be just a little bit more. And Francis Ngannou has a very long stance, so the punches are going to come out even longer. Derrick Lewis's stance is so narrow. I mean, his legs are almost together when he fights, which leaves himself open to takedowns, and leg kicks shouldn't be, but he doesn't check them at all. He could land their overhand right like you saw, I think, against Marcin Tybura, but Ngannou's leg kicks are going to be so devastating. So it's going to be very hard for Lewis to get in range, unless he just bulldozes through and try to rush Ngannou, but he can go by an uppercut. I mean, those uppercuts are vicious, man. You saw the same thing happen to Andrei Arlovski. Arlovski is pretty much the same size as Derrick Lewis in terms of height and reach, but he couldn't get in that distance. As soon as he tried, and I think he's a little bit faster with his footwork than Derrick Lewis is, I mean, he got caught by an uppercut right away. And Ngannou has a very good ability to lean back on shots as he throws that uppercut, and he just needs one, you know. And the thing about this one is Ngannou has showed an amazing chin against Stipe Miocic, who's a vicious knockout puncher. I mean, that guy knocks out everybody he fights. And Ngannou took every shot he had, even gassed, and you have to understand how impressive that is to be that gassed in the third, fourth, fifth rounds and take shots from a guy like that and just eat them. That's some scary stuff. Now, I don't think Stipe hits as hard as Derrick Lewis, but he's a lot more precise. And Derrick Lewis, we have seen him get knocked out. We saw him get knocked down in some weird ways, like against Miocic. He got hit by like a forearm as Miocic ran into him and got knocked out from that. He got knocked out by a hook kick from Sean Jordan. I would say Ngannou has a better chin here, which is going to be a big thing in this one, especially the way these guys fight. But can he take a big shot from Lewis? Maybe one, but I doubt it. The way Derrick Lewis throws his punches, if he connects, that's going to be it for Ngannou, I think, and the other way around. So my prediction for this fight, this one's so hard to call. I mean, when you have fights like this, it's so hard to pick one over the other, but I would have to go Francis Ngannou. I think he's faster on the feet. I think he's a faster puncher. His length is going to be a problem here. His stance is going to be a problem. Derrick Lewis doesn't have that many abilities to be effective with entry shots, to get in that distance he needs. And his stance is so narrow, it's very obvious to see when he's going to come in on you. So I see some jabs from Ngannou landing, some left hooks, and the left hook or even the right uppercut as a counter is very good against Lewis. But if they ever get in the clinch, or if they ever get in some kind of in close boxing range, that's where Lewis is going to have his opportunities, and that's where he's going to be, I think, more effective than Ngannou is. So my prediction for this one, I'm going to go with Francis Ngannou. I'm going to go by a first round knockout. I see him pestering Derrick Lewis from the outside. I see Lewis having a very hard time getting in. I see him either getting caught by a counter shot coming in, or I see Derrick Lewis trying to, after being a little bit frustrated or just not figuring out how he can get in on Ngannou, I think Ngannou could catch him from the outside right there from like a straight right hand or something like that. Then we go to the co-main event and my personal favorite fight of the card. Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega, the two best featherweights right now. I mean, you're talking about the best of the future of the featherweight division fighting each other right now. They're both mid-20s too. These two guys aren't even in their primes yet, and they're already the two best guys, which is crazy. Imagine how good they're going to be when they're 29. I could see these guys fighting in the future again, but this one's going to be super exciting. I think this fight is the most technical fight on the whole card by far. They could both do everything. Max Holloway's a striker, volume puncher, relies on momentum, and the volume with the momentum is such a hard thing to deal with because of his cardio as well, so he can keep that volume at a 10 the entire fight. But then again, it has to build, and that is a big thing, like you saw his fight with Conor McGregor, and even the first 2 rounds against Jose Aldo, or the first round and a half, when he can't get that momentum going, when he can't begin it and then build on it, he has a hard time getting anything off. And Brian Ortega could take that, he could do something with that, but I don't think he will. Brian Ortega loves to just seek his openings. He doesn't try to pressure on too much, especially against a striker like Holloway. He's able to do a little bit against Frankie, who's a lot smaller than him, and he's able to just land strikes from the outside, but that's not going to be the case in this one. Because Max Holloway has excellent footwork as well. He's very fast on his feet. He doesn't have that much power. He doesn't have that much one-shot power. Brian Ortega, I think, has more power than Max Holloway does. But if you allow the damage to just keep going and Holloway just to overwhelm you, that usually happens around the second and third rounds because of how much he builds his momentum and you just can't stop it. It's almost a snowball effect. Turns into this avalanche. You can't stop it. That's when he finishes opponents off. You saw that with Anthony Pettis. You saw in both the Aldo fights. He was starting to take over in the Lamas fight. I think another round or two, if it was a 5-round fight against Lamas, I think he eventually would have finished him off. The way you have to fight this guy, you gotta keep picking at him. You gotta keep landing shots. Your volume has to be higher than his when he's starting, right? Whenever he's trying to start something, you have to have a little bit higher output. That's what Conor McGregor did, and that's what Aldo did in the first fight for the first round and a half. And that's also what Brian Ortega is gonna have to do. But there's something about Brian Ortega that is different than everybody else. His ability to find a finish, his ability to find an opening that nobody else will find is something Holloway has never fought before. Holloway is very good with, using a lot of combinations and throwing out a lot of strikes. But when you're throwing out a lot of strikes, there's a lot of openings. And Brian Ortega needs one opening to find, and you're messed over. Look at Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar kept throwing those lunging combinations he throws in every single fight. He throws out the 1-2-1-2. Brian Ortega caught onto it. Caught him with an elbow coming in. That's all he needs. He needs to see that opening a few times, catches him. Against Clay Guida, he kept seeing Clay Guida ducking and rotating out to his left, I believe. Caught him with an up knee as he ducks into it. And in terms of his BJJ, one takedown and it's pretty much over. He could be on the bottom, he could be on top, it doesn't matter. Ortega's a different animal. We can all agree Ortega's BJJ is way too much for Holloway if it gets down there. Way too much for pretty much anybody in this division. So I don't see this fight going to the ground, especially because Holloway's takedown defense is insane. Nobody's taking this guy down. And I don't think Ortega, who doesn't have good takedowns, let's be honest, you can see in his takedown accuracy for his stats, it is very low. It's a very low number. He doesn't really go for them too much anymore. He tries to strike with them, and then if they present their neck or something, or if he drops them, or if they shoot in on him, that's when he gets his submissions. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Max Holloway. I'm going to go by a decision. I think it's going to be a very good fight, but I see the first 2 rounds being relatively close, especially that first one. I think the more the rounds go on, the more Holloway takes over. I see the first 2 rounds being close. I could see Ortega probably taking the first. I could see then the second being controversial. And then I see the 3rd, 4th, and 5th going into Holloway's favor. The reason for that is Ortega leaves himself open a lot. His defense is very Philly shell-like sometimes. He likes to take that kind of stance, but against a guy like Holloway who has so many weapons, and the guys Brian Ortega has fought who are used that against guys like Cub Swanson and Frankie Edgar and Renato Moicano, they don't have as many weapons as Holloway does. Holloway has good leg kicks, spinning attacks. You use that Philly shell, you can get caught by a spinning back kick. And Holloway is one of the best spinning back kicks in this division. He has excellent body work to go over the top as well. And he's excellent with switching stances. And his decisions on angles is so impressive. Able to get out of so many dangerous situations because of that. The biggest X factor here is Brian Ortega's ability to find openings. That's the biggest thing here. He has 5 rounds to do so. And like I said, Holloway throws a lot of strikes. And that means there's a lot of openings. But Holloway's openings are so small. Right? He doesn't linger out there too much. He doesn't commit too much. And I think he's going to have a reach advantage here. First time I think ever for Brian Ortega besides Renato Moicano, who was beating Ortega on the feet. And Ortega found very little openings on Renato Moicano until Moicano went for a takedown. Look what happened in the striking. Ortega was kind of getting picked apart at times. Very similar to what Max Holloway does. You know, just throwing out 1-2s, fast combinations, not lingering out too much, not trying to knock out Ortega, but just winning on points, just landing from afar with volume. And those small openings weren't enough for Ortega to capitalize on. I can see the same thing here with Max Holloway. And I see Ortega's defense just being too open for Max Holloway. I see there's too many openings from bottom to the top. So I'm going to go with Max Holloway. I'm going to go by a decision. Then we go to Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, the main event. Super fight, heavyweight champion versus light heavyweight champion. A lot of people are looking forward to. We got Stipe Miocic, a wrestle boxer, very good right hand, very good jab. He has one of the best pull counters in the game. Catches everybody with it, caught Ngannou with it. I was talking about it in my pre-fight breakdown for the Ngannou fight, and I kept mentioning how good he is at it, but I didn't know if he could catch Ngannou because of that range. He was able to land on him too. Stipe is a pretty big guy with a long reach. That's going to be a big advantage against Cormier. Everybody knows Cormier's tendency to lean to his right. I could see a left hook or a left shovel hook being open. If not that, I can also see a right straight. Notice Stipe's right straight. How he's able to get in the tightest of angles against JDS, against Francis Ngannou, against Mark Hunt. I mean, these guys don't give him that much room to throw it, and he gets right on the inside, perfect precision every time. And what Cormier likes to do, he'll like to throw a winging left overhand or even a left hook and duck to his right, and in between his left arm toward his head is an angle for Stipe to take with the right straight. And what happens? Straight punches beat looping punches every single time because of that. Shorter distance of travel, and you can block that shot with your right shoulder. So people are talking about the left hook, but I can also see a right straight, possibly even a right uppercut. Like you saw in my DC versus Alexander Gustafsson breakdown. What was Gustafsson landing? A right uppercut. You know, there's a lot more leverage in those punches because of the height difference, and also the right straight. You could generate a lot more power punching down than you can punching up. And Stipe, that is something he's going to really appreciate. Now, Stipe's takedown defense hasn't been too tested. I think the last time it was really tested was against Junior Dos Santos, who did take down Stipe. But we have to all pretty much agree Daniel Cormier is the best wrestler Stipe's ever fought. And I think he can take down Stipe. A big reason for that is Stipe's natural stance, he loves to pull back on everything. Notice his feet. You can see in my Stipe breakdown, which I'm going to put at the end of the video. Stipe always leans back on his back foot, right? And naturally what that's doing is it's leaving your front leg exposed. But you're not going to stop a takedown. You're leaving it exposed. DC's best takedowns are from the single leg. He'll change it to a high crotch, he'll work upward with it. But that single leg is something DC will really want to look for. And if you pull back on everything, because DC can fake an overhand right, which will get Stipe to pull back, front leg exposed, the generic wrestler's combination, overhand right or even a fake overhand to a single leg. That can very well work against Stipe. How much can he finish the takedown? He could finish it. We've seen DC flip over Josh Barnett. And I think he could do the same thing as Stipe. But the thing is, Stipe has excellent ability to get off on the bottom. You saw that even against JDS. The only guy to really take him down in like the last 4 years or so. Very hard to keep this guy down. He explodes right when his back touches the ground. And this could be very hard for DC to control. But I would have to say DC has the better BJJ. And the thing about DC is, he's a much faster fighter than Stipe is. He has better footwork, but I don't think he has a better understanding of distance than Stipe does. But DC does have a very good ability to bolt in, and against heavyweights like Stipe, you saw even against Bigfoot and all other guys like that, DC can really get in the distance quick. And what you saw from in the light heavyweight division against tall guys too, like Gustafsson and John Jones, he has a very good dirty boxing game. I mean, he can control those tall guys as well. Those guys are just as tall as Stipe. Able to land uppercuts on them. He knocked out Jones' mouthpiece like in the first 5 seconds of the fight. Gustafsson just couldn't get out of that. How could Stipe adapt to that style? I think he can pretty well. He has a boxing background. He knows about that whole style. But he's never been up against that in MMA, right? Especially against a guy who has the takedown threat. That's a big thing in this one, too. So my prediction for this fight, man, I've been back and forth on this fight. This is my thought process in this one. My brain says Stipe should win this fight, but I don't know why I have a strong feeling DC's going to win. I have a very strong feeling. But when I think about it, I think Stipe should win this fight. DC going up to heavyweight, I think it's going to hinder some of his cardio, which will bring it to Stipe's level. But Stipe has gone 5 rounds pretty good. He went 5 rounds against JDS, he went 5 rounds against Mark Hunt, and he went 5 rounds against Francis Ngannou. Coincidentally, DC's also been 5 rounds 3 times. Against Gustafsson, against Jones the first time, and against Josh Barnett. He was very gassed against Gustafsson. He was gassing against John Jones. Stipe only was gassing in the... He was kind of gassing in the JDS fight, but look at the pace they put on each other. I mean, how can you not think they would gas out? But they went the whole fight. I mean, they kept going at it, even as tired as they were. Against Ngannou, he was pretty tired too. But then again, he was taking big shots, and he was controlling a huge guy like that. That's going to be taxing as well. So I think their cardio is actually going to be very similar. But my prediction for the fight, I'm going to go with Stipe Miocic. After watching some of his fights against Mark Hunt, against Roy Nelson, shorter guys, those are some of his most impressive performances. He's able to really use that length on them. And now they're not as fast as Cormier. They don't have the wrestling Cormier does. They have more power, of course. But Stipe's distance management on them and his precision with that right hand combined with his power is such a scary thing. It's something DC has never faced against before. Does Stipe hit harder than Rumble? I would have to probably think so. Not pound for pound, but just them in general. I think Stipe hits harder than Rumble does. Evident for that is against when they both fought Andrei Arlovski. Stipe knocked out Arlovski very, very quickly. 40-something seconds. And they weren't the most powerful shots he hit him with. They weren't full leverage punches. But then again, Stipe's punches never really looked that powerful. He knocks out everybody. I mean, look what he did to Verdum. Never in my life would I ever thought a punch like that would knock out someone. So his power is just extraordinary. But then when you saw Anthony Johnson fight Andrei Arlovski, he went 3 rounds, right? I mean, he dropped him in the first one and broke his jaw, but he couldn't put the guy out. And a big thing about that is, look at Fabio Maldonado. Fabio Maldonado actually went up and fought Stipe Miocic. He was a light heavyweight, and Fabio was known for a granite chin. If you remember back then, everybody was saying nobody could knock this guy out. This guy's chin is absolutely insane. Glover Teixeira battered him for 3 rounds. It was one of the most one-sided fights you'll ever see in your life. Destroying the guy. Quentin Jackson couldn't even hurt this guy. Quentin Jackson said, I hit him with everything I had. I couldn't hurt this guy. He goes up and fights Stipe, and he gets knocked out in a minute into the fight. And that was around that same time. It wasn't like he took all this prolonged damage before that and his chin was gone. Everybody even coming into that fight was thinking, I don't know if Stipe can knock this guy out. I mean, Rampage can't hurt this guy. Glover couldn't hurt this guy. Knocks him out with the second right hand he lands. So that tells me how much power these heavyweights have. It's a lot more than you think. So I think the power from Stipe is going to be a lot for DC. I know DC has an amazing chin, but I think he can knock out DC. So I'm going to go with Stipe. And I'm going to go by a 3rd round knockout. So those are my predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe. I mean, this is my longest prediction video. I covered the most fights ever. I thought 225 was going to be the longest ever. But no, this one is best card of the year. So leave a comment below who you guys think are going to win the fights and why. And then on Tuesday is going to be my podcast, so be on the lookout for that. And I'm also going to do another Stipe breakdown. I might do the one he lost against Stefan Struve. I might do that one just because there's a lot of people questioning that fight and how did Stipe lose to this guy of all people. So I might break down that one just to show you guys maybe some holes in Stipe's game. And the same reason why I'm going to re-upload the DC versus John Jones rematch, showing his openings as well, because I did break down DC versus Gustafsson. Be on the lookout for those as well. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.